Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today's episode number 18, The Art of Surrender. Hello, and thank you for tuning into the podcast today. We are talking about one of my favorite things to discuss, and that is surrender. Surrender is such a big part of my life, and I love to kind of dissect this concept with people and help them better understand what it is, what it means, how it looks, and why it serves them to practice the art of surrender in their life. So, I'm going to start with a quote from one of my favorite books. It's Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment. And it wasn't until I read this quote that I really understood what it meant to surrender. And in my life, in my line of work, surrender is an active and ongoing process. And so any deeper understanding I can have around the concept is really helpful for me. Highly recommend this book, by the way, The Surrender Experiment. So Michael Singer defines surrender as the practice of surrender is actually done in two very distinct steps. First, you let go of the personal reactions of like and dislike that form inside your mind and your heart. And second, with the resultant sense of clarity, you simply look at what's being asked of you by the situation unfolding in front of you at any given time. This is a phenomenal definition slash description of what surrender is and the foundation for what we're going to be talking about today. So, in my work and in my life, I view surrender as working with the universe. And this can be God, universe, higher self, spirit, whatever word you want to use in that sentence is totally fine. I'll ask you not to get caught up with words in this podcast, always. Um, but it's about working with the universe and not asserting your will, assuming that you know better than whatever power is greater than you and at play while we're here in the 3D paradigm. And this is a significant piece to the puzzle because here on Earth, you are actually God. Like in this 3D construct that we have agreed upon and are participating in, you are the one in charge. Your highest and best self, of course, not the human you that struggles here on a day-to-day basis. And it makes it a lot easier for me, I think, to know, oh, somebody's looking out for me. Somebody's got my back. It's actually me. It's the best, greatest version of myself. And heck yeah, she knows better than my little human mind. So, outside of Earth 3D construct, this is a totally different conversation that we can talk about at a different time in terms of like greater good, God, divine, all those conversations. But in terms of looking at our 3D experience, I find it very helpful to understand that, yeah, we're actually in charge. So when I talk about working with the universe, working with spirit or the greater energy around us, with us, that's what I'm talking about. Surrender has changed my life in so many different ways. I have so much less fighting and resisting. I have a much easier time dropping into the flow state, being in my full feminine, being much softer. When you shelf control in favor of surrender, everything about who you are and how you operate in the world will change in the most magical of ways. Now, this I'm not specifically directing towards women either, because of course men have their feminine parts and balance as well. But it is a very feminine quality to be able to surrender, and one that we all would benefit from working on more deeply. So, when we allow the universe to guide us, it leads us to unimaginable outcomes. We could never know better than the force that is greater than us, right? When we think of the best house, the best job, or relationship, and we're trying to manifest it, You have to remember that your dreams are only as big as what you believe them to be or what your mind can handle. And oftentimes, any blocks or resistance to those dreams is completely unknown to us. So, manifesting is more of a trying to force something while not having all the puzzle pieces in place. And when surrender is trusting that there is something greater that has your back and it's trying to put what you need in front of you, if only we would listen. So I'm going to sidestep here for just a second. If you haven't realized this already, my podcasts are occasionally a little bit scattered. There's not a whole lot of like definitive structure. The topics I'm talking about are not linear in any way, shape, or form. I did try to use Chat GPT a few times to give me outlines to podcasts, and it was kind of ludicrous. Um, so I will bounce around a little bit here, a little bit of facts, a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of storytelling, because the idea or my goal is to give you a greater understanding of what surrender is and what it means. So, when we leave our future, our happiness, our love, our joy up to God or spirit, the outcome is much greater than we could ever imagine because ultimately, this greater being wants the best for us. And this is an integral part of the spiritual path is having faith in such concepts or such things. So if we follow the steps that are laid out for us, it always leads to love and open-heartedness and a more fulfilling life. So no matter what, if we just did what was in front of us, the end result would always be a more open heart, a more present sense of being, and a more authentic embodiment of ourself. Like that is always the goal. And that's always what the higher self, the universe, wants for us. And so everything that's laid out in front of us is ultimately getting us towards that goal. Whether we do it consciously or not is what we're talking about here today. So, another dimension of the surrender concept is that we cannot be invested in the outcome, only in the next step. So, I'll talk about this, we'll work on from a sense of a job, right? So, for example, if we know we're not happy in our job and we want something more fulfilling, we know what our next step needs to be to change it. We start looking for a new job. Maybe we quit our current job. Maybe we take on a part time gig. Maybe we start making art in the evenings that we can sell. We know what the next step is, but we can't know the ultimate outcome unless we have a firm anchor there. So let's say I'm a teacher, but I would like to be a librarian. I know librarian is the end goal. And so I can start building my path from the future backwards to now. And that can help tell me what I need to do next. Maybe I need to go back to school. Maybe I need a certain kind of apprenticeship or training that will set me on this path. But what if I don't know what I want to do? What if I just know that I'm not happy in my job? Then the first step is into chaos. It's into death and destruction and unknown. It's into the path where we have to let something die in order for something new to be reborn. So if we look at surrender from this topic, the I'm unhappy in my job, how do I surrender to the experience? Well, you're unhappy in your job, right? Look at what's in front of you. You don't like it, it's not fulfilling, it feels draining. You long to be doing something else, and maybe you do know what that is, maybe you don't. Step one is turning your attention towards that unhappiness. So we sink into why we're unhappy. Do we have beliefs around this? Do we go into this career because we thought it would make our parents happy? Is it strictly to make money, but it actually sucks our soul? That's when we have to start doing the shadow work. So we surrender to what's in front of us. It leads us to the shadow work. When we're done with the shadow work, we have uncovered a deeper part of ourself, and then we get to move forward with that deeper part of ourself. Oftentimes, that deeper part knows what we want to be doing. So, without forcing an end result and looking at what's in front of you and surrendering to it, it will ultimately get to the end result that you couldn't have even imagined because you couldn't see it yet. Right? That would be an example of surrendering to what's in front of you. instead of pushing for something else. If I hated my job, I could also say, oh, I'm going to go to interior design school because that's kind of been something I always thought would be fun. And that's a third option. And guarantee if you don't know for sure that that's what you want to do, it's just going to be another learning experience, which is kind of like a detour on the healing path. You can look at things head on and it will take you down the path in a very uncomfortable shadow work kind of way, or you can take the detour, which is like the long way around, to be honest with you. The hardest part about this surrender process is the unknown and the discomfort of leaving old beliefs and constructs behind. This is where most people get stuck. So, simply unattaching from the outcome and enjoying the journey and allowing the journey to be the reason why we're here really helps facilitate that transition instead of making it so scary. This is also what leads to learning and growth and where we find our joy and happiness. It comes out of the journey itself, the process of the shadow work or the looking at the things that are bothering us, the things that are right in front of us. So I'll give you another example with regard to surrender. So let's say that you have a goal to lose weight. First, you have to lean into what's in front of you. So the acceptance of who you are currently, because there's a reason why you're here. There is a reason why you're overweight, right? And we can't skip over that without creating more problems or more karma. This is the definition of karma. So looking at where you are right now might lead you to loving yourself, forgiving yourself, honoring the part of you that brought you here. Maybe you have some trauma that you forgot about or you are unaware of that created protection around your physical body. This is where the medicine is. This is the place where if we surrender to what's in front of us, aka the being fat, it's where the nuggets of gold are hiding underneath. Where if we force, if we're like, oh, I'm going to manifest this weight loss journey, or I'm going to skip ahead to the part that I want, are you getting the medicine? Are you growing? Are you reaching depths within yourself? Probably not. So through this journey, of which your end result might be, I want to lose weight or I want to be in better shape, maybe you'll also encounter deconstruction of beliefs around invisibility or manipulation or feminine. And that's everything. That's what people come to me for, is this profound healing work. But if we surrendered to what's in front of us, we would get it. So if you look at what's in front of you right now, and you're on this weight loss journey that you want to be on, there are so many questions that will pop up as you're looking at it. If eating well isn't coming naturally to you, why? Are we plowing through it? Are we forcing ourselves to eat well or to be on a diet? Why? And how does that impact you, right? If we force doors to open, we're bypassing the lessons, we're bypassing the medicine because we are making the assumption that we know better than our body, and our body's trying to tell us something by being overweight. The growth that is possible in these places is insane. And this is surrendering to what's in front of you instead of chasing the dream of what you think will make you happy. In this case, maybe it's being skinny. And so when you don't focus on the end result and you're genuinely being with the process, you'll do the shadow work in the healing that's being asked of you. You'll transform as a person through this process instead of skipping over it. Forcing yourself to engage in like weight loss techniques or drugs or something like that will actually cause you more problems in the long term. So when I work with people who've had like bypass surgery or they do the weight loss drugs, the amount of entities and other things in their shadow is always really startling to me because they haven't resolved the issue. They've resolved the being overweight part, but they haven't resolved the core reason of why they were overweight, or else it's likely that it would drop off of their body naturally. So this is one example of surrender. I'll give you another example from my personal life. So earlier this year, my events started decreasing in attendance. My clients started disappearing. My friendships started ending. I was looking for a new apartment because I'm selling my house and nothing felt right or nobody called me back or responded to my email, it was the weirdest thing. And I started to get this feeling that I was being asked to relocate. And the more I allowed myself to consider that, the more loud that feeling got. I started getting the message to purge my stuff, to let go of this, to get ready to move on a bigger level that felt more, I'd say probably more strong than any message I've ever received about relocation. Now, intellectually, logically, this is not something I want to do. I have spent many years growing a phenomenal community. I have wonderful friends. I have practitioners who are just next level that I work with on a regular basis, and I have to let them all go. So I'm fighting it, naturally. But I have to look at what's being presented in front of me, and I have to take the next step. So all of these doors are closing. My mother, of all people, offers to let me stay with her and my dad for a few months down in rural Florida. Now, I didn't exactly have the most spectacular childhood, but the timing of this offer it does not elude me. Here I have just gone through children moving out, a divorce, a complete death and rebirth of myself. It just makes so much sense that I'm being asked to return to a childhood piece to look at before I reemerge into the world as a single human female for the first time in my life. So I know this is the next step to move forward. I know I must let things die, take time to recover and transform or rebirth, however you want to look at it. And I'm being asked to surrender. And so I could stay and force my will. I could hit the marketing harder. I could join a new networking group. I could raise my prices to cover my bills. But the truth is, there's something bigger and better calling to me. And the only thing I need to do is get out of the way and say yes. So, what happens when we don't surrender? When we don't surrender, we struggle and we feel bad. It's in this space that we hit a lack of money, clients, work, good relationship, good health. There will always be things that are coming up that are making you feel like you're suffering or like things are harder than they need to be. And it's because you're not surrendering to what's being asked of you. I fully understand that saying this sounds so much easier than it is. Just want to say that. Another example of this would be in a hypnosis session that I did a few weeks ago. And one of the messages I received from my higher self was that I needed to be more vulnerable. They were showing me how much armor I had around me and how many like constructs I had around my body. They're like, you need to strip this down so that more of you can come exist inside your human form. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? And they said, you have to be as vulnerable as possible. Like, put yourself in every situation you can think of that will make you feel more vulnerable. And that meant speaking my truth. It meant professing love. It meant going out in public and like telling people that I was a shaman during like networking meetings with all the closed off professional people. Um, just to the point where I felt really vulnerable and raw. The interesting thing is that my higher self told me if I did not do that, the universe would make me lose everything to create vulnerability. So think about this for a second. They literally gave me a heads up that I would lose my house, my car, and all of my possessions if I did not follow these instructions, that the universe would create vulnerability. Imagine if we sat still long enough to listen, like through a good meditation practice or other spiritual practice, anytime the universe is trying to warn you, hey, you have to address this or we're going to make you address it. I thought that was such a gift. It wasn't fun by any means, but a gift nonetheless. And when I ask the universe for something, I try to remember this thing that one of my friends told me once. She was like, the universe responds to you in 3 different ways. Either it will say yes, it will say yes, but not yet, or it will say, no, I have something better. And this is like a mantra that I carry with me in my life. Anytime that I want something that is not coming to me. Well, whether it's a certain partner or a place to live or a feeling, a lifestyle. Um, I remember this phrase. It's just one of my favorites. It's also taken quite a number of years for me to learn how to walk through life knowing that I am worthy of love, that I'm allowing that love on purpose and support and all the other things that the universe has for me, allowing it to flow to me. And I think this is where a lot of people struggle is the ability to receive. So the universe is there trying to support you all the time. You have so many spirit allies. You would not even believe me if I told you how many. And they're always working on your behalf. They're always here for you. Are you aware of whether or not you're allowing them to do that? Are you aware of what that support feels like? It's a really interesting question because I think the answer for most of us is no. And what I would suggest asking yourself is if someone gives you a compliment, no, the next time someone gives you a compliment, what do you do with it? Do you allow yourself to take it in and let it land inside your body? Do you justify it? Do you brush it off? What is your reaction? What was your reaction the last time someone paid you a compliment? Because that will be really telling with regard to how you let yourself receive things. It's just something to keep in mind. Learning to trust that everything happens to you for a reason and in your best interest, it really is a practice that you need to cultivate. But once your mind frame shifts around this, it will literally change your life. And you probably won't go back, at least not on purpose. Where is there space to worry and feel fear and anxiety in a world like this? So many people come to me looking for a sense of peace. Can you imagine the peace that's available in this space if you felt like you were taken care of 100% of the time? Personally, when I need to lean into this, I will lay on on the floor of my living room. This is 100% something I recommend trying. I'll lay down and be like, "Okay, I give it up. Like let go, let God. I trust that y'all are here to support me. I don't want to carry this anymore. It's too freaking heavy. I don't want to worry about it. Take it." Lay on the ground and sit in that. Are you able to give it up? Are you able to feel the relief? How many days of doing that does it take you before you do? Or maybe you want to pray instead. How many days of praying does it take before the energy shifts for you? Because that'll be a magic number you'll want to look at later. I find that we often have these amazing spiritual practices, such as learning to surrender to the universe, and our life goes so good and things open up so much and everything is great. And then we forget to do these practices. And then after a couple weeks or a couple months, we descend back into the heaviness that is human existence. We're like, oh my God, everything sucks. Like, why is it always like this? Why does everything happen to me? No, no, we just need to pick the practice back up again. So, surrendering on the floor, giving it all up, letting go, let God. Highly recommend trying that. Even if it's just once, see what it feels like. See if you're able to give it up. A second exercise that I recommend for surrender, the starting foundation points of learning how to surrender, I should say, is a journaling exercise. So every day for the last almost a year, I have had a really intense journaling practice, and I'm actually in the process of creating a course about it because it's completely transformed my life. But there are a specific set of questions that I journal on that are meant to shift my mind. And when you're a person who's extremely sensitive, extremely magical, you have to spend a lot of time doing mind maintenance, or you will fall into the pit of despair that is collective consciousness on Earth. And that's just like, it is what it is. Once you put your toes in there, it's hard to take them back out. So, two of the questions that I have on my daily journaling practice, I'm going to share with you. And I recommend doing this for at least a week or two before you deem whether or not they work. It takes it can take several weeks for things to start to change. So you have to have a real practice around this. So the first journaling question I want to invite you to do is evidence of support. So I write down evidence in which I see the universe is supporting me. Maybe it was my friend who offered me a coaching session. She wants to practice. I get a coaching session for free. This is a sign that somebody wants to support me. It helps them, it helps me. It's amazing. I write it down. Maybe I had my favorite sequence of numbers popped up 4 times today. This is somebody telling me, "Hey, I'm here to support you." Um, I got free coffee the other day. Like, that is evidence of support. So whether it's very woo, very magical, or very pragmatic, keep track. Turn your attention to any evidence that you are supported either by other humans or by something unseen every day. And I challenge you to write 3 things each time. Over time, this will help shift your perspective on how you are supported. Because whatever we turn our attention to is what will grow. It will become more and more obvious on a daily basis how supported you are. You can also combine this with gratitude if you want. I do both separately. The second journaling practice is about silver lining. So I will take something either that I'm stuck on in the past or is happening currently to me that I am feeling a lot of challenging emotions around. And I will write down all the ways in which this is happening for me, right? So, for example, if I had trouble paying my bills this month, I'd be like, okay, I'm really upset. I'm frustrated. What is the silver lining? How is this for me? Well, I'm going to actually try extra hard on my social media posts. Maybe I'm going to take a client I wouldn't normally take. Maybe I need to rest, and the universe is saying, Nadia, like, sit back. You're going to get burned out. And I need to trust that when the bills come due, money will appear. There's always something behind the scenes that's happening for you. And this goes hand in hand with surrender. Look at what's in front of you. Put aside whether or not you like it and do what's being asked of you in this moment. As with anything, the first step is to notice. Just notice, observe. And then when you keep noticing, things start to shift. This journaling practice that I'm describing to you, as well as the laying on my living room floor practice, has totally changed my life. It's been unreal because, as I said, these are foundational to surrender. If I am seeing that I'm supported on a regular basis, if I'm seeing that there is a positive or silver lining to every quote unquote negative situation, it begins to change my perception about the world around me and about how supported I am, that someone has my back and they're looking out for me and that they always have my best interest in mind. This has changed my life. It has brought me unimaginable greatness, expansion, love, joy, and peace. While it can be challenging, I never let that stop me from continually becoming the best version of myself and the one who learns how to surrender more and more deeply. At this point, it's still not 100%. I don't just say yes to everything that's in front of me. I do still have some fight left in me, but I am to the point where the universe can come knocking and say, hey, you need to relocate to the other coast of your country. You're not going to know anybody. You don't have a pile of money to help get you set up, but you have to go. And then I say yes. And then immediately, as soon as I bought my plane ticket, doors started opening, money started flowing. It became more clear where my end destination was. And the more I surrender, the more clear things get. It really is a life-changing experience. Surrender is probably one of the most important practices that you can have as a human or as a spiritual individual, sensitive individual, because you will constantly be asked to surrender. It's just a part of life. So, in terms of next steps to explore this concept more deeply, I do really highly recommend The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. It's such a phenomenal book. I recommend the journal exercises that I mentioned. And I recommend that if you have trouble giving up control in the place where you know you need to do it the most, that you get help and support and guidance because it can be easy doesn't have to be hard. It will always be challenging, but working with someone who's been there before is super helpful. And that would be my best advice for someone who knows they need to surrender more deeply into the flow of life but struggle to do so, is to reach out. Thank you for listening to my podcast today. I hope it was not too rambly for you and that it did make sense. I really enjoyed sharing my perspective about surrender, and I look forward to talking with you next time. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredartshaman.com.